Hey, so we're going again with Don Carmody. Don, thank you so much for getting up this early and coming in to Cambridge.
Oh man,
My pleasure.
yeah.
Thanks.
We don't do the remote thing. As I mentioned, I don't think I know how. I guess I should learn. But
Yeah, we're not techies. We just wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah. Well, I've done a few podcasts, but from California or wherever, so I'm used to it being remote or Zoom or
right,
Microsoft Team or something like that.
right.
So
Yeah.
No, this I
It's a
love.
lot
My
nicer
wife
than
might
to-
come in and have a seat just for a moment,
Sure.
Don. Just don't pay attention to her.
that's well, that's a not nice thing to say.
Anyway, so hey, you're here. This is incredible. This is so much more intimate than a Zoom call or
That's true.
remote, and I love that you're here. This is incredible.
Yeah. Welcome to the room.
Well, great. Boy, you got
know?
cars.
I do. It's a 1956 Ford pickup truck, which I own. There's one out the back door, and I've been collecting little toys, and people buy them for me. I know it's a little silly, but
It is silly, but it's
it's a pool room.
kind of fun.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, this
I
is
hadn't noticed they were all the same model. Yes, now that I look at them, they are pretty much a lot of the same model.
Yeah,
yeah, they pretty much are. I
Every
think
one
every
of
single.
this is a 1955 right here, but everything else is a 56,
Oh, yeah.
the same as my truck.
Well,
Yeah,
I have my toy, and it's a '57 Porsche.
nice.
Yeah, that I just last weekend put it in the container for the winter.
Oh,
I have a container up at my place in the Kawarthas, and that's where he sleeps.
wicked.
Sweet.
1957.
Yeah,
So that's tiny.
very tiny.
It's a
yeah.
sports car.
It's a real sports car. Yeah,
What color is it?
white,
Oh, I love it.
tan leather. Yeah,
Beautiful. Oh, jeez.
You'll have to show me a picture after we're done. I'd love to see it.
I got it in 1985.
Nice.
Bought it off a movie.
Oh, really? Did you get a deal?
Yeah, I did get a deal actually. Yeah, it was driven by Chris Christopherson in a
Oh my God.
movie called Welcome Home.
Yeah, right on.
So yeah,
Wow.
Very cool. So Andrew had a question. Do you still get excited about making movies?
yeah, and it's funny because of COVID, we really haven't been doing very much, and it's really been sort of gnawing at me. And when I drive by somebody else's circus parked on the street, I sort of get, why isn't that not my circus? So anyway, yeah. So we're hoping to get a few things finally cooking in the early new year.
Right on. Good
So,
for you.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
So
but aside from that, we were always busy. Always. 2-3 projects a year. So
Well, people who don't know you won't know, but you are arguably the biggest, most prolific film and television producer in this country.
yeah, I guess that's probably fair to say. It would
Yeah.
be, based on volume.
Right on.
I mean, your IMDb list. Oh my God, man. Producer dream. Do you find that movies today, while you're working away, are the scripts still the same? Do you still get the same excitement? Are the writers still just as good?
Yeah. It's when a great script comes across my desk, which is not often. I gotta, even in the busiest times, it wasn't that often. But when one does come, it's really exciting, and you want to try and get it going out there.
Right.
Now, of course, that's always my personal take on it or my opinion of a screenplay, and sometimes I get disappointed when people don't share my enthusiasm,
Of course.
but or aren't as enthusiastic as I am. But I really always look forward to it, and it's especially if I get a comedy. So
Okay.
they're hard. It's the old vaudeville adage: dying is easy, comedy is hard.
Right.
So for every great drama script I get, I probably go through about 20 bad comedies.
Wow. Wow. What makes a bad comedy though? Like, I'm just curious. There's a lot of people out there wondering.
Not funny.
Well, that works.
Yeah.
Now, how
or-
often do you get words on a page that you feel, well, if with the right cast, this could be perfect?
Well, pretty. I mean, when I get a great script, that's it. Because when I start reading it, a great script leads me to sort of be casting it in my head as I'm reading it. Once I get in there about the first, third, I go, okay, this got something here. And I'll start, reading it with specific actors in mind.
Oh, that's
or
interesting.
Specific types of actors and things like that. Not that I can always get those actors.
Sure.
But it allows me to, move forward. And especially when I now turn around and go, okay, I got to start the process. I got to, be raising the money, getting a director, and then going out to cast. So it's good if you have a kind of wish list of cast going in.
Right on.
So
And I imagine that there are, I mean, how many actors out there when they see your name come up on the phone that they're answering and they're excited to hear what you have to say?
well, it's invariably their agents.
Well, I suppose that's true.
Yeah, I mean, even if I reached out to the actor individually, which I have on several occasions, depends on the actor. They'll go, "That's great, that's great. Send it to me." Oh, and by the way, call my agent and let them know you talked to me.
Right.
So they're all pretty careful. They've had it drilled into their heads by their agents. Don't talk to producers by yourself.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but no, it's having an interpersonal relationship is great, but it's still, it's a business.
Business is business. That's
Sure.
Sure.
Exactly.
Don,
100%.
Don, do you mind, sorry, if we just bring your mic in a little even closer? I know it's,
Okay. Is that?
yeah, close. Yeah, I mean, if you're comfortable with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
So what was the first film you ever made?
The first film I ever made as a producer, or the first film I ever worked on?
Oh, let's go with work on.
It was McCabe and Mrs. Miller,
Oh, I know the movie.
way out in Vancouver, and I was a free laborer on it. I was the teaching assistant to a guy called Mark Gervais, who was my professor in film theory and history at Loyola University, and he was a very well-known film critic. He wrote for Cahiers de Cinéma and a number of other influential film magazines, and befriended a lot of filmmakers. And he had this habit of loaning out his students as free labor to these various directors to help them out. And he came in one day, and well, actually, the first film I worked on was actually a thing called Journey that Paul Almond, a Quebec director, was directing, and he at the time was married to Geneviève Bugeaud, and she was in that movie, and I worked on that for, as a driver or something for a couple of weeks. But that was one of the first freebie ones. Then he came into the classroom one day and said, "I have an amazing opportunity to work on a film with Robert Altman, but it's in Vancouver, and you got to get yourself out there, and you have to put yourself up, and there's no salary or anything like that." So
That's a commitment.
and that was it. So I was like, okay, and I knew about this thing called Drive Away, where you could pick up a car, and as long as you drove it out, they would give you the car or truck or whatever. In my case, it was a Bell telephone truck, and they paid for the gas and the driving, and then you dropped it off in Vancouver, and that's how I got out to Vancouver. And then a friend of my father's had a guest room above his garage, and that's where I stayed.
That's awesome.
So that started
Connections.
on it. Yeah. Well, it was, yeah. But no, it was working for free. And then I showed up on the set, and the production manager was a guy called Jim Margellis, and he had no idea what to do with me. He had no idea that this was even happening. He was like, "Who are you? What are you doing? What am I supposed to do with you?" And it was like, "This is a completely union show. I can't do anything with you, And I had no idea. I'd never been on a professional movie set. And but I went out and introduced myself to Paul Altman and said, "Okay, great, thanks," and then went off and continued directing. And I sort of hung around and tried to help and all of that. And some guys were like, "Yeah, sure, give me a hand here." Other guys were like, "You touch that, I'm calling the steward,"
Totally.
So, and then Jim came to me one day, very early on, and said, actress needs to go into Vancouver. So here's my car keys, driver. And of course, it was Julie Christie.
Ah,
And as we were driving, and she was charming and lovely. And she was like, who are you? You're so young. Because I was, 18 or 19. And I don't know, she just seemed to be taken with me. And I helped her in town and ran her around on various and sundry things. And we got back. She said, "Well, so what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know what I do. I just came out here as a volunteer and and I'm helping out." So she said, "Okay, come with me." And we went into Margella's office and she said, "He's driving me now. I like him."
that's awesome.
And I became Julie Christie's driver.
Now, did that get you into the union?
No.
Oh, okay. So you're
No,
kind of
no.
flying under the radar.
Under the radar. She was a personal request, so the Teamsters couldn't. They were very unhappy. But
Oh, that's
Really?
that's
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, and it was, but it was fun. Nobody wanted to go against her, and it was the early days of Canadian cinema, so
Sure.
there weren't that many even Teamster drivers in those days.
Did this
So,
experience push your film career a little bit?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, when I saw how a professional crew worked, I was like, wow, that's amazing. Although there were many things that Altman treated that were very different from, I subsequently found out. I mean, things like he would dress up the carpenters and the electricians in period costumes and have them wander around the sets and do their jobs
As extras, kind of thing.
extras because it was about the building of a town.
Oh,
So they were building the set as they were filming it.
Man, that's cool.
that's really.
And it was quite intriguing and all that. Anyway, I was out there for almost 3 weeks, and spent a lot of time with private time with Julie Christie, and occasionally I would drive her and Warren because they were together at the time, and inhaled a lot of pot smoke because they were smoking in the car all the time, and it was quite amazing. And I didn't really have any conversations with Robert Altman much. He was like, "Hi, how are you?" That was about it, and I went to dailies because I was taking Julie and Warren, and would sit there and listen to him talk and all that. So I thought it was quite an amazing experience.
So a bit of an education,
Oh yeah, and then I went back to the school and finished up film school.
and bragged about your experience in
Oh,
Vancouver.
Yeah, and I've remained in love with Julie Christie to this minute.
So my next question
Yeah.
is: Have you had an occasion to work with Julie again?
No.
No. Oh, what a
No.
shame.
Yeah. So, no, but we've exchanged messages a couple of times over the years. People that knew me, worked with her, and said, "I bring regards from Don Carmody," back and forth.
Sweet.
So, yeah.
Now, do you find that working for free, this labor thing? I mean, it's kind of gone away now. Nobody would expect that sort of thing to some degree. But there must have been a certain integrity to it, because the kids working for nothing just on a movie set sort of are there just for the desire and the passion of the movie.
Yeah. In a way, you sort of get what you pay for, though, sometimes.
Okay.
But in other cases, it's people make their creds. So, I've had people working on films for me for free, which I don't like doing. And I generally say, no, if you're going to be on the film, you're going to get paid. I pay them as little as possible. They got to get something.
Sure.
And it brings a certain responsibility that, you're being paid, so you better do the job. And no, mostly it's when people work for me in very, very entry positions, it's because of connections, or, I found them through the film school where I've been lecturing, or, that type of thing, or mentoring. And, the people that stay in the business are the ones that go out of their way and they always want to make themselves more useful than anybody else. So
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, and I've seen it happen where some kids that came in and, they've just gone on to do amazing things. And then others, like, they came and worked for me once, and I've never heard from them again.
Right.
So
Well, it's not for everybody.
it's not. No.
Has anyone ever bugged you, and you just said, "Go, I can't do this, and then all of a sudden, there was a time when somebody was just so obsessively trying to get into the business, and then you've given them that opportunity and they've grown. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I get pestered a lot.
I imagine you do.
It's hard to differentiate the ones that pester me more than usual. But no, there have been a number of people that I've worked with that have gone on to do things. So when a case in point was, I was pestered relentlessly by his father, who was a well-known businessman. He owns a company here. I don't know if I want to go into who it is.
That's fine.
But, and then finally I had a film that worked, and I said, okay, send your kid over. So he came, I met him. He was a nice, presentable young man. He had just finished university. And this was his first real job. He was from a very wealthy family. And I thought, oh, this could be a disaster. And generally what I try and do with newcomers, people that have never been in the business before, I mean, I look at it as if you want to be in this business, you got to figure out what you want to do in this business. So what I would do is I'd say, okay, work in the office for a couple of weeks. You just, I'll get a sense because, the production manager or the line producer or, even the production coordinator will tell me this guy's a piece of,
Right. Sure. Makes sense.
and whatever. So, and he did all right. And so I said, okay, this week you're going to be with this department. And then after that week, I'll put you with that department. And you'll see how it goes and all around. And the thing that happened with this kid was after a week with the department, they'd come to me and go, do I have to give him back? I could really use him. I was like, And I'd take him away and I'd give him to another department. And then that guy would come to me and go, do I have to give him back? And I realized that this guy was just out there knocking it out of the park every time with everybody that he was working with, which is pretty rare. I've had it a couple of times, but this time was... Anyway, he ended up moving on from my show to another show, and then he went on his own. He went to Los Angeles and working as a lot of people work for free as interns, as, assistants or whatever. And they take an incredible amount of abuse. And he ended up working for a company run by Larry Ellison's daughter. And in no time ended up as her personal assistant. And then it seemed like a year later I heard, and he was getting a producer credit on all these movies that they were making. And he just skyrocketed.
Wow.
So now, and he's now an independent producer. So
Fabulous.
yeah. So,
And it started with you.
well, that's kind of how I started. I worked as a driver for on a movie called, the first paid position was as a driver on a film called U-Turn that was being produced by a company in Montreal called Cineplex. Now, in those days, movies were all out of Montreal. Toronto had nothing. They had a few scam lawyers raising, tax shelter money. But real people making movies, real producers making movies were all out of Montreal. Cineplex or Astral or, Pierre David's company. I can't remember what it was called anymore. And so I was working for this company or this film, and I was a driver, driving rushes back and forth because they were shooting in Smith Falls in Ontario, and the processing lab and everything was in Montreal. So I would make that trip twice a day, and they would give me a list of stuff to do in Montreal for the various departments. Go pick up this, go buy that, this, that, and the other. So I did that, and I was working, 14, 15 hours a day and driving 100 miles an hour on the 401 from Montreal all the way up to Smith Falls. And then they would show dailies to the director in the hotel ballroom where they were staying in Smith Falls. And the cameraman had trouble one day, very early on, doing the projector, because he knew how to, run a projector, because he was a cameraman. He came up through the ranks. And that's what I did in university, put myself through school. I worked for the audiovisual department as a projectionist and lighting technician and things like that. So I said, "Oh, here, let me help you. You've got the loop wrong." And I became the projectionist from then on, which added an extra hour to my day with no additional money. But so I would run the projector, and then then I'd take the dailies back to Montreal. But while the rushes were showing, the actual director, George Kassinger, would dictate notes to me to take back to the producers in Montreal. So then I'd drive them back and I'd do all my chores, and then I'd go out to Cinepix. They had their own screening room at their offices in Montreal. And I would watch the dailies with John Dunning, who was the head creative guy there. He was one of the partners. And I would give him the director's notes, and he would give me his notes to take back to the director. And I always refer to that as my real film school.
Yeah, that was great.
It was like, wow, working with the best producer and one of the top directors at the time in early Canadian cinema, and doing all that. And then the director became very fond of me and said, "What are you doing next?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, I'd like you to come on and work as an assistant editor." And, and those, again, it was very loosey-goosey with the whole union thing. And I was like, sure, I don't know what an editor does, but, I'll do it. And at the same time, John Dunning said to me, "What are you doing next? You want to keep working for us?" And I was like, yeah, I'd love to, but I've already told George that I'm going to work with him as an assistant editor. He went, "Well, great. That makes you more valuable to me. So you tell George we're paying you, and then when you're done with George, you got to come back here." And
Wow.
And I came back, and then another Cinepix film, doing this various stuff. And then he and his partner, Andre Lake, said to me at one point, I think after the second or third film, he said, "We'd like you to, you're very smart, production now especially, so we want you to run production for us."
Jesus, man.
So, yeah. And then one day shortly thereafter, I was head of production for Cinepix, and Andre Link came into my office with this tall, gangly, bucktooth guy and said, "This is, he's going to be working with you. This is Ivan. You two guys here. Now you need to figure out something. We want a horror movie. So find us a horror movie that we can make." And it was Ivan Reitman. So Ivan and I sat there and spitballed. "Do you know anybody that's got a horoscope?" "No." "Do you know anyone?" "No." And they said, "Well, there is this guy out of Toronto, and I heard about him. He's in film school there, and his name is David Cronenberg. And let's call him and see what he's got."
Oh my God.
And he basically sent us what became Shivers.
Right.
And that was my first film as a producer.
Oh, wow.
Shivers, with Ivan and with David Cronenberg, and all very young. David was older by quite a bit than either Ivan or I. And we started in the business. We made Shivers and then Rabid and The Brood. So, yeah.
David's daughter's prepping a movie right now to direct.
Oh, Caitlin?
Yeah.
No, she's gone from still photography to directing.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Very talented still photographer, and she's worked for me several times. Yeah. So.
So it sort of sounds like you really didn't know that you were going to be a producer. You just wanted to work you just want to work in the business.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, like all film school guys, I wanted to be a director.
Right.
And then I sort of saw what a director did, and wasn't all that impressed. But the funny thing was, in film school, it was a select group. It wasn't a lot of people studying film in those days. And Loyola there were two film schools in Canada. One was Ryerson, where it was all a tech school. They were a technical college. They weren't even a university in those days. And you went there if you wanted to be a cameraman or learn about lighting or something like that.
Okay.
And but there was nothing creative about it. You didn't study movies. You didn't do all that. And then there was Loyola, and that was all creative. And quite frankly, on the technical side, it was a bit of a joke. So,
Okay.
there was this one Polish guy that sort of, loaned you the cameras out of a little office and sort of taught you how to thread it. And then you went on your way and you made these movies. So there was a group of us, I think probably 7 or 8 in the senior film program. And every month you made a movie. And if it was your month, you wrote and directed. And then every other month you did something else. You were the cameraman, or you were the lighting guy, or you did this or you did that. So it rotated. And the one job that nobody could get their head around, because you had to get up early and, everything, was the producer, who had to organize and arrange things. And I guess because of my father, I was always an early riser. In high school, I went to a private boys' school in Montreal, and we didn't live there, so I had to make the train every morning at 7:30, which meant I had to get up at, 6:30 and get dressed and wash, and then walk to the damn train station, which was 20 minutes away. Got on the train and went into Montreal for school. And I was always an early riser. So because of that, I just out of sheer boredom would start producing everybody's movie and making the calls. I need this, and I call the lab to get this or do that. And so of all the 7 or 8 movies we made, there was one I was a producer, the writer and director on, but on all of them I was doing the producer job as well as other stuff. So that sort of started me on that way.
Right. So when you went to the other company, you've already had all this experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the same experience because a
Right.
lot of it is just figuring it out on your own. But it's all experience is good experience.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and then of course it allowed me to get on to film sets and to see, other producers or real producers, and some of them who were pretty good, and some of them were like just freaking awful. So
I think I
Some
met a
things
few
never
of them.
change. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, without going too far into it, I had worked with Harold Greenberg, who was head of
Yep.
Astral Films, and Harold had helped me out on a student film that we were making where we needed, a lot of stuff. So I remember going into Harold's office and saying, okay, I really would like your help on this film and this. And he, decided he liked me, and he said, okay, what do you need? And I said, well, we could use a little film. Kodak. Hey, Harold Greenberg, I got this kid here. He needs some 16 millimeter film, What else you need? And then, camera.
That's great.
Mel, Mel who ran, was called Cinevision at the time, but eventually came Panavision Canada. Give this kid a camera, and that, what else you need? Da, da, da. So he basically in 20 minutes put my whole movie together, and I was like so grateful. And at the end of the day, when I came back, I said, I'd like to show you the movie. And he said, I don't really want to see your movie, kid.
Wow.
But, thanks for saying thanks. And then I came in and I brought him a bottle of very fine whiskey, which my father had told him what to buy. And he said, nobody's ever done that.
Wow.
Given me a gift thanking me. And you're one of the good ones. I'll remember this.
Wow.
And eventually I ran Astral Films and produced Porkys for them, so I paid them back pretty good. But
Sure
where
did.
it really happened was I got a call to help them because on the apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz,
Right.
which was neither a Harold Greenberg or a Cinepix film, but they were having incredible trouble because their location manager, who was French-Canadian, had to go to all these Jewish places and talk them into letting them use their locations, like Mo Walensky's and Gibby's and, all of these places in Montreal, and there's always been a kind of tension between the Jewish community, especially the Orthodox Jewish community, and the French Canadians in Montreal, and they don't really trust. So these guys were getting nowhere, and I got a call and said, "Can you help them out?" So I said, "Well, what do you need?" And then they said, "Well, we need to get into Mo Walensky's. We need to get into, Moishes. We need to." And so I said, "Well, I'm not Jewish, but I know somebody who's very Jewish." And Harold, it's done. Can you help me out? And again, it was like, I walk into Mo Walensky's lunch the next day, and there he is. Mo says, "Hey, Harold says you're a good guy. Come here. What do you need?"
Oh, true.
That
Wow.
type of thing, and then, the Jewish resorts up in the Laurentians. Sure, whatever you want. Everything. So I basically did the locations for Duddy Kravitz in about a week.
Was this, yeah, wow. This movie set Richard Dreyfuss.
Oh, yeah. It was Richard Dreyfuss' first real kind
Yeah.
of leading role
Yeah.
and all that. But the producers were less than stellar. I would watch them, and I'd be sitting there at my folding table because that's all they had in the producer's home where they were based on the thing. And when it came time to figure out where they were to do what was called a cost report, I eventually found out, they put all the bills that had to be paid on the floor in big piles, and that's how they figured out where they were. And I thought, this is not a very good idea. And they kept, running into trouble with, burning locations and stuff like that. And I was getting mad because I had found these locations for them.
Right.
And, there was one instance where we were shooting in a very, very well-known Jewish cemetery. And the production manager was too cheap, and the producer didn't say anything, to buy a headstone or get a fake headstone made. So they decided, well, what we're going to do is we're going to change the name on a real headstone by putting a plaque over it. So the prop guy, made this plaque up that said, Dreyfuss, and they stuck it with super glue or something to the headstone. And then, of course, at the end of the day, when everybody's finished shooting, they all took off, and nobody took the thing.
Oh, wow.
So it was only when Mrs. Rabinovitz, or whoever, who was really had her hubby buried there, came out on Yom Kippur and looked, and she couldn't find her husband. And there was some guy called Dreyfuss in her place.
Oh my God.
So I got a frantic call from the cemetery. What the hell? Because I had arranged for the cemetery.
Holy crap.
And so I called up, and, the picture's long wrapped and everything else. And so the production manager climbed over the wall at night with a cold chisel and a buddy, and they defaced the stone trying to get the damn
Oh, my God.
thing off. And they ended up, I forget what the damage is, but they ended up buying a headstone, paying Mrs. Rabinovitz or whoever she was a bunch of money to not sue them. And,
So it would have been better just to build the headstone.
Yeah.
Pay the money first, which also taught me to be, don't be penny wise and pound foolish.
Right.
So,
Wicked. It's interesting that, you come up through the ranks of driver and made those small steps. Mm-hmm. So you at least understand the departments below you.
oh, well, yeah, that's the way, to me, I always thought you better know if you're going to try and tell these guys what to do, you better know what their job is. So, I worked as a prop guy. I worked as a location manager, as I said. I worked as an assistant cameraman. I had been trained as a sound man. Actually, in film school, the one that Harold helped me put together, that film won the Canadian Student Film Award, and the prize
Wow.
was a job at the National Film Board.
Okay.
Which everybody was like, oh my God, not only is it the National Film Board, one of the few places actually making movies in Canada, but it was a government job. So you could retire there. You could get a pension. So people were like, oh my God, you got the brass ring. And
Incredible.
I got in there, and again, they didn't know what to do with me. I was some kid that won a prize.
But that you
So,
must have been
yeah.
stoked.
Well, I was stoked that I won the prize.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I get paid. and they decided, okay, well, here, go see this guy, Len Green, who was a very nice man. He ran the sound department. So he goes, well, all right, I'm going to teach you how to be a sound man. So I was a location sound recordist for, one summer on a National Film Board documentary, which was kind of cool because it involved an incredible amount of traveling. It was like every 2 days we were in a different city in Canada, right across the country. But I was recording sound, and I learned how to record sound, but I hated it. That's not what I wanted to do. And I on this show I got to Calgary, where a couple of my friends from school were there, and they had just gotten jobs as gophers for this American TV show, Western. And we had gone out drinking the night before, and they said, well, we got to go to bed because we got to get back early. We drive to Banff, or not Banff, Canmore, on the way
Canmore.
to Banff. And that's where we're shooting. So I went, because I had an off day with the film board thing. So I went to bed, and my phone rings, and it's 6:30 in the morning. They say, do you have your sound gear with you? I said, well, of course. What are you talking about? So they said, well, we got a problem here because the sound man and his boom man were driving to Canmore, and they were in a terrible auto wreck, and they're in the hospital, and nobody can record sound, and it's going to take 2 days to get a sound crew up here from Hollywood, because they were in Calgary. There's nobody. So I guess they could have gotten from Vancouver, but even that would have taken a day or two. So it was like, can you jump in your car and come out here with your sound stuff and record sound for these guys? So I thought, okay, sure. And I called up the producer of the film board thing and said, I'm doing this, so you know. And he said, well, okay, fine, as long as you're here the next day and whatever, we start shooting. And I went out there and I recorded sound on this thing, this TV movie that was a Western.
Man,
and
incredible.
It was like, hey, and then they were like, hey, we can't get anybody tomorrow. Can you stay tomorrow? And then I had to call the film board guy and go, hey, can you? So yeah, for 2 days I did sound on this Western. It was kind of fun, but which it leads to more stuff. But again, when I got back at the end of this show, I went in and I quit the film board, and everybody was like, you did what? You quit the job of a lifetime? And then, of course, history being what it was, if I had stayed with the film board,
Right.
I'd probably be retired about 6-7 years ago, and on my pension, and
Yeah, but you wouldn't have had as much fun.
oh no, so
not even close.
yeah.
That's incredible.
So as I tell people, I've been incredibly lucky by being in the right place at the right time. So
Did you put yourself there though? I mean, how much is it luck and how much is it, you and your mind and the way you work?
I don't know. I mean, for the longest time, I always go, boy, if these guys figure out I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And of course, being a film producer at the ripe old age of 22,
Yeah.
and all these old grizzled guys, especially in Montreal, these old grizzled French Canadian guys are like taking orders from me. And, you tend to go the other way. You become too tough. So, it's quite interesting. In Montreal, my reputation is completely different than my reputation in Ontario or Vancouver or
Is that
Hollywood.
right?
Oh, yeah. No, in Montreal, I was a son of a bitch, because I sort of thought I had to be.
Oh, I see.
And so they're very tough. And, it's funny when I go back to Montreal, it happened recently on Death of a Ladies' Man. We were shooting in Montreal. And a lot of the older guys on the crew who had known me from years and years, they also knew that I spoke French. So they would, I'd be on the set and I'd hear one of the crew guy, oh, that's him. That's Don Carmody, that son of a bitch, right? Okay, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, Joan, he speaks French. I just laugh. So, yeah.
That's
I
brilliant.
guess it's all a part of the game.
Yeah. So, even I certainly mellowed after I had kids. If you sort of, to me, I still remember watching, a film crew after having Brendan and Caitlin and Aaron and going, they're just a bunch of kids having fun.
Totally.
And you realize, just cool it, it'll get done in its own way. I mean, I don't tolerate incompetence
Of course not.
or people being venal or whatever, but film crews are meant to have fun. It's a tough job. It's hard work, and
It's a child's dream, I suppose, making
Yeah.
movies,
yeah. I think what was it? I think Spielberg said that a movie crew is like the best, erector set he ever had. So that type of thing. So yeah, it's. So over the years, I've mellowed.
Okay.
Okay.
But coming up as a film producer, very early on.
I'm sure it was
got-
invaluable. It got you what you needed to be here and mellow today.
Oh yeah,
But that comes with experience.
Yeah, and it's also knowing what people do. I mean, that's the thing that I never, when I was as a film producer, you did everything. It was only later that when the agents started becoming, and who had no idea what a film, how to produce a movie was, they needed somebody to produce them because they wanted to have that kind of control. So they started with this whole thing about a line producer. And my first experience with that was, I had done a couple of movies with Columbia and with Ivan. And Ivan was going off to do, we, had split up by that time, and he was going off to do Ghostbusters. So Columbia said, well, you're not going with Ivan. I said, no. And they said, well, we had a problem here in the show where the leading actress and the producer are not getting along together. And the director has basically said he wants to ban the producer, which is a big problem. So we need somebody that can work with this producer. And I said, well, who's the producer? And they told me this guy called Marty Ransohoff. And Marty was one of the great producers. He had, started Filmways. He had done all these, like Beverly Hillbillies and Mr. Ed and Petticoat Junction and all of this, and then segued into feature films and had done things like The Americanization of Emily, Ice Station Zebra. I was like, my God, this guy's a legend.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now.
And I said, yeah, I guess. And I said, well, I got to meet him. They said, oh. I said, well, doesn't he want to meet me? Well, he does, but, that's the problem, is that Marty's Marty. And it was one of these things. Marty he had no break in his mouth. And whatever he was thinking came out. And he had gotten himself in trouble he was in a wardrobe fitting with Glenn Close and Ann Roth, who had designed the costumes, and it was a picture called Jagged Edge. And Ann had said, so Marty, what do you think? Doesn't she look gorgeous? And Marty said, all these costumes make her ass look fat.
Oh, geez.
Well, that was it. And Glenn was like, this guy, blah, blah, blah. He thinks my ass is fat. I'm not going to do this. I'm that, blah, 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 blah. And so all of a sudden, he decided to be persona non grata. And he had fought with the studio and eventually compromised that he would hire somebody. And I went in and I met with him. And I realized that this is what this guy's all about, but he's still a genius. And I agreed to do it. And it was always interesting. He'd call me every morning and just ramble. And I'd be like shaving and this stuff. and just doing it, and realized that he didn't want to he just wanted to unload. And so it led to a really interesting situation. But
So you became his on-set guy.
his eyes and ears, which then led to, doing shows kind of as a hired gun. And I did a number of shows like that. And it was also at a good time because all of a sudden I had these kids. And the life of an independent producer is pretty precarious, no matter how good you are. And, by this time I'd already made Meatballs, I'd already made Porkys, all of those sort of things. But it's, you're only as good as your last film. So I had people offering to pay me to produce movies for them because they didn't exactly know what they were doing, or they were doing so much. Like in the case of all of a sudden I produced 6-7 movies with Miramax, the Weinsteins. And because they were busy doing their stuff, and they didn't hire people that would fight with them, they hired people that would work with them. So they didn't like a lot of the producers. So they would go out and they'd find the project and the director and the writer, and then, okay, you're going to do this. We're going to, put you here. And so I did all these shows with them, and it was great. I mean, I didn't have to raise the money. I didn't have to hire put up with the creative things. That was all, Harvey. And I just basically made sure the train ran on time. So that was kind of my job. And I got paid a lot of money to do that. I was like, this is great.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And, I did that for a number of years until actually the kids were, in high school. And then I said, okay, I got to be making my own stuff again. So there was a period there of about, let's say 12 years where I was pretty much a hired gun. But the other thing it allowed me to do was I brought Hollywood to Canada.
Yes, you did.
So I was the first guy to bring major Hollywood movies on a regular basis to Toronto and Montreal, and to a lesser extent Vancouver. There had always been, movies going on here. Like Robert Altman especially, he loved Canada. And he must have shot about 6 movies in Canada himself, some better known than others. But very few directors would consider Canada at all. And to a lot of them, it was a purgatory. It's like, oh, God, they don't really like my movies, so they're going to send me to Canada where it's cheap, But that wasn't always the case. And I remember, one of the Miramax ones that they brought me and said, hey, we've got this great script. These 2 actors wrote it. They're in the movie. And they want to do it, but we can't get it. They want to shoot it in Boston. But they can't, we can't afford to do it in Boston. The Teamsters are too tough, and the crews are too big, and all of this. Can you show them that you can do this up in Toronto? And I said, absolutely. The movie was Good Will Hunting. And
Oh my God.
I'm actually from Boston.
Right, yeah.
So I knew. So when I met Matt and Ben, they got off of the plane and they were like, this is going to be a disaster. Toronto's not Boston. And I said, so what do you guys want to see first? You want to see the Swan boats? You want to see the Commons? Or would you like to see Harvard? And they're like, what?
Interesting.
I said, yeah, come on, let's go. I said, let's go to Harvard first, because that's where most of this stuff goes. And the University of Toronto designed on Harvard.
Sure
with
is.
a couple of everything else. So they were like, oh my God. And they said, they'll let us shoot here? Because Harvard wouldn't let them shoot there. I said, sure. As long as you don't call it the University of Toronto, they don't care. So, and then I took them to Hyde Park and showed them the Swan boats. They were like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So I said, we also got duck boats. You want to go see the duck boats? No, that's not in the movie. It's fine. And we ended up shooting the movie almost entirely in Toronto. And the thing that really, we shot for a few days in Southie, which was absolutely unnecessary as far as I was concerned, but they're Southie boys.
Right.
So, and so I think we shot 3 or 4 days. So when they won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay, they got up there and was like, thank you, South Boston. And I went, yes, thank you, South Boston, for costing us twice as much as Toronto for 3 days. And anyway.
Did they not thank coming to Toronto? No? Oh, man.
We have to make a call.
Yeah, man.
But, and nobody can tell that it's Toronto.
No,
So
not at all.
I made so. Yeah, it's like, what I did Chicago. We shot 1 day in Chicago with second unit. Everything else was Toronto.
Now, Chicago, did you not take that to Winnipeg?
No.
Somebody-
All Toronto.
It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Not a day in Winnipeg.
Yeah, no, okay, so I got some information wrong because SARS hit that at that time.
No.
Is that?
SARS was after that. As a matter of fact, the movie I did in during SARS was Resident Evil 2.
Okay.
And we were the only film shooting in Ontario at that time that would take a chance with SARS. And
Oh, wow.
yeah.
And I guess, I mean, thankfully, because it ended up being massive, those movies. In terms of the success of Resident Evil, how many did you do? 6?
6.
Are is it did it fly bigger than I guess the better question is, what is really the most successful film that you've made to date, or series?
Well, successful film would still probably be Porky's.
Okay.
I mean, if you're talking about worldwide box office.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that one. I mean, the Resident Evil's cumulative,
Yeah, sure.
definitely that's the most successful series of films.
Okay.
You know, and each one got the big thing with Resident Evil was that each one was bigger than the last until we got to 5 and 6, and then it petered out.
Did you happen to see the latest Resident Evil film?
What do you mean, the series?
No, what's that thing?
No, it was a reboot. It was a reboot. They shot it in Sudbury.
Oh, I heard about. Yeah, no. I parted ways with, you know, when Paul Anderson and Jeremy Bolt, who brought me in on the first one, you know, left. I was like, well, I'm done too.
Yeah, I don't
So,
think it had anything to do with the original.
No, I don't
No,
think it.
there was not original cast. I don't think she wasn't
No.
in it, and
No.
all that. No, no. I
Well,
was
there's
brought
really
in.
no reason to.
Yeah, the original film, first one was being shot in Berlin, but it's all based in Raccoon City, which was always based on Toronto. The Japanese game guys had always based Raccoon City on stock footage they'd seen of
Really?
Toronto. They thought, oh, this looks cool. Let's make it here. So Toronto was the stand-in for Raccoon City in the video games. So anyway, when they were making the first one, they wanted to come to Toronto for some exteriors and interiors, some hospital stuff and everything else, because they couldn't find that stuff in Berlin that looked American. Mm-hmm. So I got a call to meet with them and help them, and I got involved, and then I co-produced the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and then on the sixth, because I was done in South Africa, I basically arranged all of the post-production, the visual effects and things like that. So I was kind of almost a post-producer when you get right down to it. I went on the set once, so that was it. So
Interesting.
yeah, but everyone up until 5 did better than the last one. Yeah.
Well, you were getting a bigger audience.
Yeah.
The word of mouth got out there, and
And they were very big, complicated movies. So yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned about winning the prize back in school. Today, we have so many prizes.
Yeah.
Andrew and I were discussing this earlier today. You know, growing up, there was the Oscars and the Grammys and the Emmys and
Golden Globes.
the Golden Globes even
No, that's fairly
became
new,
something.
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, the Toronto Film Festival and Cannes, and you have different prizes. In your opinion, what do you think the most coveted prize is in the film business today?
Oh, still the Oscar.
Still the Oscar,
It is. Okay.
Always.
which you have one of.
Yes, for Chicago.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I mean, the big thing that's exploded over the years is film festivals. Mm-hmm. They, I mean, there was Cannes, and I think there was Venice when I was coming up through the ranks. And I remember going to Cannes the first time, because Cannes also had a market, which Venice didn't have. And of course, we would go, Ivan or I would go and try and pitch these various movies and try and sell them and whatever. Because invariably we had the U.S. rights, or definitely all the Canadian rights. They were all Cinepix. And then Cinepix sold off everything else to foreign. So that was all part of the financing plan. and we would go and pitch the various foreign buyers and things like that at Cannes. But there were no other festivals that I remember. There was Montreal had an international film festival, but it was fairly provincial. It eventually grew bigger, but then was overtaken by TIFF. And over the years, various other places, started having festivals. And actually, when Toronto started, it wasn't called Toronto International Film Festival. It was called the Festival of Festivals.
Oh, I remember that. That's right.
Yeah, and it was the brainchild of three guys here, and they decided that they would do a festival that basically would take the best from all these other festivals and put them all together and show these movies. And they never gave awards. There was no award at TIFF, and there still really isn't. There now is you have the audience award, and you have various and sundry, special awards for this or recognition of that. But TIFF's not a competitive festival like Cannes or Venice or, so many of them now. They give out prizes. But, that's how Toronto started. And then because it became so valuable to the major studios as a launching point for the Academy Awards more than anything else, because it was in the fall, so they would generate a lot of heat going into the what they called the award season, which was basically for the Oscars. So yeah, that's where TIFF all started from.
And TIFF is huge now.
Oh, gigantic. Yeah, and more and more popular with the studios and the actors and all of that. But so, which brings me again to something when I started. You couldn't get directors up here to do their movies, without a stick of dynamite. They just thought they were being sent to Siberia. And that's what I did, was I brought a lot of these directors up and I showed them that they could make a really good movie, and that, they didn't have the bullshit with the unions. They didn't have, they were far enough away from the studio that they would leave them alone. So it became very attractive to start shooting in Canada. And the younger directors who came after, who did the TV stuff and whatever, they didn't know that they were supposed to hate it here. So they liked it. And they continued to say, hey, my next movie, I'll go to Canada. Yeah, I had a good time there. So, it's not all me. It's the crews and everybody else working up here. And the city was always welcoming. And I know, I'd be in a restaurant with, big movie stars and stuff, and people would, very shyly look over, but nobody would approach them. Nobody would pester them for autographs or stuff like that. A few occasionally, invariably turned out to be American tourists who would pester the movie stars. And so the stars really enjoyed kind of
the anonymity of being in Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. It's very good.
So that sort of happened. But yeah, it's one of the things I'm most proud of is starting the stampede to Canada. And
Wow.
yeah.
Did you ever feel a need to have to go down to LA and deal down there?
Oh yeah,
I imagine.
Sure. Oh no, right after Meatballs, Ivan and I both were like, okay, let's get out of here. We got to go to where the action is.
Right.
Right.
And we both said, okay, strike while the iron's hot. We had both heard people, oh my God, you guys come down here. We're going to work with you. It's going to be great. And it was funny. We both reminisced. And, Ivan unfortunately died about a year ago. That when we got down there, it was like, after being told that we were like stars, you're going to be here. And like the phone wouldn't ring for 2 years. It took us almost 2 years to figure out Los Angeles, where, as I tell people, it's the only place on earth you can die of encouragement. So, yeah. This is great. You go into a meeting at a studio and everybody's like, this is terrific. Yeah, we're going to work with you guys. This is going to be great. We're going to, blah, blah. And then you get home and it's like crickets. And it finally, to me, I realized you don't have a deal unless you get home and there's a phone call from business affairs waiting for you. Then you got a deal. But other than that, it's all bullshit. And nobody says no in LA. It's all great, blowing smoke up your ass. We're going to be this, we're going to be that. And then, no. The only time you got a deal is when you got a deal.
So how do you know the difference when you're in there? You don't.
You don't.
So you guys came off of Meatballs, and you came down there,
Yep.
and you just stalled.
Yeah, stalled. It was like we took and not that we were taking meetings together, but he was taking his meetings, I was taking my meetings. We were still working on stuff, and like nothing happening. So
It was a successful film.
yeah. Well, I mean, Ivan, his next film was Animal House, but he wanted to direct Animal House because he had directed Meatballs.
Yeah.
Nobody would let him direct it. And it wasn't until he brought other producers on and, put it all together that he got Animal House made. And that gave him the clout going forward to insist on, that he was going to direct this stuff.
Absolutely.
So, whatever. And then, I mean, I did a few things. I even came back to Montreal for Harold Greenberg and thing. And, and then my next Hollywood movie was Porkys, which gave me the clout.
Right.
So
Is LA still the same hotspot it always was?
it's where the business is.
Yeah.
All the decisions are made, and it's like you always had to be there because you've got meetings happening. I mean, now, of course, nobody goes to their offices anymore. It's just ridiculous ever since COVID. But prior to that, you had to live in LA. And it's why I've always had a home in Los Angeles. And I spent as much time there as I needed. And then I invariably made all my movies in Canada or somewhere around the world or whatever. But yeah, no, it's always been an important place to have your base. Because if you're not there, people forget about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even actors, they go, well, I'm a big movie star now. I don't need to live. Well, you do, because you got to have a meeting and you got to do this and all of that. Now, again, after COVID, so much is virtual. I think that's really changed the business. I mean, and, casting.
Do you think it'll stay that way?
I think so, because I haven't been in a casting room, I think, in almost 7 years. It's been, everything is done on tape. Everything's, actors are self-taping or, their agents are taping and then sending in. And you don't meet the actors until you hire them, type of thing. Sometimes on a callback you'll meet or whatever, but
I was going to say that personal thing that there's a rapport that you get physically.
Oh yeah, well, and directors will, sometimes do it more than others. Like on Lucky Day, Roger insisted on having real auditions, and I'd sit in every now and then, but it was like, it's so much more efficient to do this.
Well, I
It's
mean, an
interesting.
actor too can
It is, yeah.
he can sit or he or she can sit around all day
Yeah,
and continue to do the self tape until they got it right.
yeah, but a lot of them. I still remember at a conference ACTRA had. This is 10, 15 years ago, and they brought me in, and they were talking about the casting process, which in those days was you met the actors. And, if you're doing a casting thing, it was like every 5 or 10 minutes, a different actor would come into the room and whatever, and in those days we used to all smoke and the rooms were all small and stuffy and full of smoke. And the actors were saying to me, you guys are really disrespectful. And, I don't get my attention or, barely anybody thanks me afterwards. I said, let me tell you, you probably came in after I'd been in that little stinky airless room for 3 days, seeing an actor every 10 minutes. And you come in and I can tell you're not right. And if you don't convince me I'm wrong in the first minute,
We're not working together.
it's like, and it's not that we don't like you, it's just you're not it. And all we want to do is get the hell out of that damn room. So if you come in and you're it, that's one more check mark to me getting out of that damn room. If you're not it, then I got to see somebody else. So it goes on like that. So it's like nothing personal, buddy. All we want to do is get out of that room. And if you're not helping us get out of that room,
Yeah.
we tend to lose it after 3 days. So,
Makes sense.
oh yeah, beginning of a casting session, it's like, oh, tell us a little about yourself and all this, blah, blah, blah. And after 3 days, it's like, Okay, fine. Go ahead. Would you like to hear it another way?
Get
No,
out.
thank you. Yeah. So,
That's hilarious.
Now that because things are kind of convenient now with the online and all that, that kind of goes back to film versus digital. Has the integrity kind of thinned out at all?
integrity? No.
I don't know if that's the right word, but maybe
Quality?
the
Yeah.
quality, maybe.
No. I mean, look, I thought I would be long gone. I've hung up my boots, before I would shoot anything digital.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Boom. Now it's like you can't even buy film anymore.
Right.
So it's all digital. And it's like the whole thing with, well, I have vinyl. You have vinyl? What are you, crazy when you can have a CD? Or something, an MP3. Most people cannot tell the difference.
Right.
And that's audio, and it's one of your finer senses. So, when digital first was coming out on film, I'd look and I go, oh, that looks funny. No, that looks like video. I could tell video from film. Video, I can't tell anymore. And it's not that my eyes have become less. It's just video or, digital has become that much better. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at a film like Top Gun Maverick. You think there's a piece of film in there? Nowhere. It's astonishing what they can do. And of course, with visual effects, more and more, even, 10, 15 years ago, visual effects were all digital. So, you'd always have that divide, and it was always, making the film fit with the digital and all of that. And the more visual effects you had, the less important film became. So, no, I don't see it. I'm astonished at how fast it's gone and, what you can do now. I mean, frankly, anything you can think of,
That's right.
you can do.
Yeah.
So,
But do you feel that the quality of films has gone down a smidgen? Not some of the big ones because they take time and money to do it. And what I'm getting at is everybody can make a movie now. You can make a movie on your iPhone and edit it on your
and people
iPhone.
have.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. But the thing is, back years ago when you had film, guys would go outside of the studio to have a cigarette while they reload the camera. Well, now we're just doing this. So there's no time. So the director had to do he had to think about what he was going to shoot because he had
Yeah, that is definitely the young directors coming up. I mean, I can remember the old days with a director when, if you wanted another take, I knew exactly how much a foot of film cost and for the film, for the processing and the printing. And I'd sit there and go, 70 cents, 70 cents, 70 cents, 70 cents. And he'd go, I got it. Well, now they don't care. They just burn it and then they erase it.
But see, that's what I mean. So somebody had to come in with a shooting ratio, and if he screws up, he doesn't have film for the last 3 days of his schedule.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. That's definitely changed. And especially the young filmmakers who come out of like the commercial world or, the film school where there's no discipline. So,
Same with editing. You'd have to think about it before you cut that film. Today we just go, oh, never mind.
oh yeah. No, because I was, an assistant editor and the hot splicing and, the tape and all of that. Winding the reels and all of that. Even, as a projectionist, you had to do it and then you had to hit the changeover mark right in the time. Well, now it's just you take
A disc.
a disc, and it's all there. So, yeah, it's not even a disc. Some of these theaters are getting it directly from satellite.
Right.
And just it downloads into the
Holy
projectors
crap,
and
it's
off they
fascinating,
go.
isn't it?
It's like, if the movie doesn't perform, here's another movie.
100%.
Yeah, so.
But I
Which
just
is-
thought that
yeah.
the thought process that went into making movies, making that edit.
Well, it definitely is. And it's really affected from the director's side more than anything else. And of course, the producer still has to go, what do you need 39 takes for? What are you getting here that's that much different? And a lot of actors will also go, come on, what do you want that's different? You know, and I came up, you know, through the ranks, and I was very lucky to work with people like Norman Jewison and Sidney Lumet and Franklin Shafter, and, you know, these guys, man, you know, they began at 8, ended at 5. I remember with Franklin Shafter, man, oh man, I could see that 5 minutes to 5, and his hand went up. Prop man slapped a scotch in his hand. And you go, thank you, we're good, wrap.
I love that guy.
We would go to dailies. Dailies were maybe half an hour. And then you would go off and have dinner and whatever, you know. And Sidney Lumet was like that. He was, you know.
That's incredible.
You know, actors go, Sidney, I'd like one more. No, I got it. Or he'd stop the take in the middle and go, okay, I'm fine. Let's move on to this. And people were like, what? You didn't have a full... Well, I got what I needed.
Right.
And
what changed? What?
They cut it in their head. They knew what to do it.
Sure.
These young guys right out of film school or whatever, they have no idea, quite frankly, what they're doing. They dream of, you know, crazy things, and then that's what they want to get. And then they get it. And, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I'm not saying all of them are like that.
Right.
But and some guys who are known for being just pains in the ass and shooting incredible amounts of footage and take after take after take are also some pretty amazing directors. So, you know,
Yeah.
there's a scale. But
Well, I remember when I was a younger stuntman, I'd go to work, and directors, for the most part, were incredibly prepared. And I go to work now, and
yeah.
a lot of stuff is
Yeah, sometimes they don't even have a storyboard or something.
Oh no,
you know?
well, but they're also, especially as for stunt guys,
Yeah.
those guys are dangerous because they don't understand what they can and can't do. So they just think, oh well, yeah, well he puts his life on the line, so you know, I don't need to rehearse it properly, or I don't need this, or you know, and off they go. So yeah, no, that's one of the things. I've made a lot of movies with a lot of stunts and you know, that's one of the things that's really important to me is I don't ever want to hurt somebody
absolutely.
on a film. So it's like, I don't care how good the film is. It's not worth hurting somebody badly or killing somebody.
Right.
Which we've seen a lot of.
Oh, yeah.
Every stunt guy's going to get some bumps and bruises, but absolutely,
yeah.
that's our job. But
Yeah.
I respect that. Thank you. That's awesome.
Big time.
It has to be. Yeah. I mean, it's a movie. You know, it's not life or death. So.
But politics seems to have played a big role these days. Has it changed? Has politics play a role?
How do you mean politics? I mean, there's always going to be that hierarchy thing, you know. The director wants this, the producer wants that, but you're not talking Democrat, Republican.
No, certainly not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
There's always a push, you know, like directors always want more, and, you know, producers are happy to give them more as long as it's within reason and not making them look bad. So, you know, I have no problem horse trading, as I call it. You know, I do that a lot with all my directors, and, you know, some of the best directors is like, you know, I'd love to give you that Technocrane, but you know, we're completely out of money. But if you could cut an hour on a Friday, I can probably get you that Technocrane. And then they're like, oh, okay, you know. And the ones that play ball, that, you know, say what they mean and go, okay, I will try and do that, then it's wonderful. You know, and I've worked with some tough directors and, you know, guys like Rennie Harlan, that everybody's like, oh, he's going to kill you. And no, I got along great with him. And, you know, God, who else? Some incredibly, you know, profligate directors that, you know, people warn me, oh, this is going to be a bad, and somehow we get along. So, yeah, I can only remember one really bad experience with a director, and, you know, the guy barely worked again after that, but it is what it is. You know, if you're respectful of each other's job, and that's really what the politics is.
Yeah, it's a two-way
If
process.
you're respectful of it, and you both realize you're trying to make, you know, a good film, it doesn't behoove anybody to make a bad movie. And as I've said, people say, well, you're always really good at bringing things in on budget. And I said, yeah, but that's not my primary thing. I don't want to go crazy over budget because that's not good either. But, nobody thanks you to bring them a bad movie and you give them change. So,
Sure.
if you make a budget and the budget is realistic and everybody's on the same page, then you make the movie pretty much for the budget or within the contingency or something. But when somebody comes in and just says, well, fuck it, I don't care, invariably you end up making a piece of shit. So,
Yeah.
and you paid a lot of money for that piece of shit. So,
Yeah. Why do it?
yeah, no, exactly. So,
Very cool.
What about TV? TV's changing.
well,
Big time.
yeah. It used to be people, in their feature films, they look down their noses at TV. And, TV to me was always, sitcoms or, the crime of the week that got solved within an hour. And I was like, I didn't watch that shit. I didn't
Yeah.
care about it. I didn't want to do it. And it really wasn't until I was making a movie. I still remember I was probably out here in Cambridge because it was on Silent Hill 2 where Kit Harington, who was in the movie, and Sean Bean, who was in the movie as well as the first one,
Yeah.
said to me, hey, we've just been working on this thing in Ireland called Game of Thrones, and it's on now. You got to see this. This is amazing. And I was like, TV, fuck. Even though it was HBO, I was like, yeah. So I was like, and then I think it was Sean, he was shooting here in Cambridge, and he said, I'm leaving in 3 days, and you still haven't watched Game of Thrones. You got to watch it before I go. And I said, well, I got it recorded. So anyway, I did. I watched the first episode and I went like, holy shit. And then I watched the second episode and I went, wow.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, wait a minute. I get this. This is like a big movie, long movie. So to me, that was what we called in those days long form. So that I understood. I knew how to make that kind of stuff. So that's when I started looking into it, and then I got into television, and we started the television side, and we did pretty well. And a case in point would be, I made a movie called The Mortal Instruments, which is based on a series of best-selling young adult books. They were really dense. Each one of these books was about 450 pages, and all these characters and these stories and different types of, you had vampires and werewolves and this and that, all these different things. And when we made Mortal Instruments, the fan base who loved these books were like, well, what about that? Well, what about that? Well, the movie would have been 3.5 hours long, So we made the first one. It did reasonably well, and we were all set to do the second. We were actually in pre-production on the second when, because of how the independent films are financed, we had a studio deal, we had various, foreign distributors, and some of our foreign distributors started falling out, going, no, your audience isn't going to be there for the second one. So I said, okay. So we very reluctantly pulled the plug, and I remember saying, hey, part of the problem is these books are so dense that it should be almost like a long form mini series like Game of Thrones or whatever. And then we did it as Shadowhunters. And
Okay.
We did 4 seasons. It basically hit all the books. So yeah, I mean, there's television that way is now quite amazing. So, and I think a lot of it is because of Game of Thrones. Even things like Yellowstone, when you look at it, you're telling a big sweeping epic family drama. So you're not trying to do it in 90 minutes or 110 minutes. You're able to do it over a season of, 10 1 hours or 13 1 hours. Or
People seem to love an abundance of stuff.
Yeah.
They like handfuls of candy. So
Well, the other thing, of course, is that what Netflix did was the whole idea is that they're all there. So when you start watching, you're not waiting for every Thursday night at 8.
Right. You can watch it at your leisure.
Binge
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Binge came out. And actually some of the stuff has now gone back to where you can't binge it and it's pissing people off. So, they're like, well, I want to see the next episode of Lord of the Rings, but, it's only Thursdays. It's, blah. So there are there are issues like that, but Netflix really broke the mold with what they were doing, and changed how people watch and consume, you know, drama, comedy, whatever. So yeah.
I mean, even personally, I think the last movie I actually sat down and watched was Shawshank Redemption, just because it's a classic that I love.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't really catch movies the same way I used to. But I love binging. Yeah.
No, yeah, no, we love binging too. But to me now, the movies I reserve for, you know, big spectacles. So when I think of
Totally.
the last James Bond, I saw Maverick, I saw Batman, I saw, So I'll go out if I'm going to go see something that's laden with special effects or something, I got to see it in a movie theater.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
when I was a young producer, I would, I'd see 5 movies a week if I wasn't
Yeah,
shooting.
yeah.
Just at the movie theater, because I had to, and anything that was doing well, I had to see. Why is this doing so well? So I would go see it, and sometimes go see it twice if I didn't quite understand why. So that was all part of my educational process. And like in film school, we saw all these old movies, and one of my favorite things is, as the teaching assistant for the film history class, part of my job was to take tickets at the door, because the students would get in free, but to try and help out a little bit, we'd sell tickets, and people would come by and go, "Oh, what are you showing?" And I'd say, "Well, it's Charlie Chaplin and the Gold Rush." "Oh, really?" And they'd sort of poke through the porthole and go, "Oh, it's in black and white. Forget it." And off they go. And I'd like, "This is genius. You got to see." So, yeah. But, to me, if a movie was doing well, then you went to see it. And you always had a little bit of time, because movies didn't disappear after 2 weeks the way
Right.
they do now. I know Porky's ran, in Columbia, South Carolina for, 58 weeks.
Wow.
So,
Jesus.
stuff like that.
My wife and I went and saw that new Elvis movie,
Oh, yeah.
and exactly 1 week later, it was on one of the streaming services.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, not that it was bad or anything. It's just,
Right. It's just another revenue stream that they sold it into.
no, exactly. Netflix is, even when they, they'll guarantee you a theatrical release, they're talking 2 weeks. That's it. Then it's on the streamer. So,
I mean, are theaters as popular as they were?
because of COVID, no. You know,
Seems unfortunate. I loved. I
yeah.
still love going to the movies.
Oh, no,
really, I just
Absolutely.
well, my wife and I are distraught that where we live in California, our go-to movie theater was a Regal that has just gone into bankruptcy from the main thing, and they've shut it down. And this was a spectacular movie theater. Had like 8 or 10 screens. The chairs, the footstool comes up to this, to that, you swing out the table. They were so comfortable, I'd fall asleep sometimes, but no, but, and that's closed. We're like, well, where are we going to go to a movie,
yeah.
That's not saying a lot for the movie.
No,
yeah, true.
no, but it's, they've been predicting the demise of movies ever since radio.
Right.
It's like, oh, radio's going to kill movies. Nope. And TV's going to kill movies. Nope. Video's going to kill movies. Nope. It's the communal experience of people sitting around a campfire, frankly, enjoying a story together, I think will always be there. I think it's probably because of the situation with COVID and streaming that so changed how people consume entertainment now. I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest danger they've faced in time.
YouTube.
Well, YouTube, and there's
Quick videos, quick.
well,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of if you tell a good story properly, you're going to kick the shit out of YouTube every time. I mean, YouTube's you got amateurs doing their thing, and people are like watching their friends, or they're consuming fashion or something else. or being impressed by one or two shots or something. It's not a movie. So
Agreed.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I hope. I love story.
I think so. And if you tell a good thriller, you're going to be okay. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Knives Out, Glass Onion does, because that's basically a murder mystery. That's a 2.5 hour murder mystery. It's got great cast and everything. I think it'll do as well as the original Knives Out, which did incredibly well. But that was before the pandemic too, so it's gonna. I don't know. It's like we got to get this pandemic past us, and people have to start going again. And my hope is that somebody's gonna come in and take over that movie theater that we love so much. That's right near us. Otherwise, we got to travel. The more you have to travel, the more of a problem it is. It's
Totally.
What about? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to talk about genre. Like you mentioned, if you had a good thriller,
yeah.
a comedy. What's your favorite personally? Is it comedy?
Yeah, comedy, yeah, for sure. But like I say, they're hard.
Yeah.
So, people always ask me, what do you, for film students, what should I be looking? I go, horror, man. You find a new way to kill a bunch of teenagers in 90 minutes in, inventive ways, and you can do it. And you can do it cheap.
Yeah.
Because you don't need movie stars. It doesn't take a long time to shoot these things. You can do it for a limited budget. I mean, look at Blair Witch.
Yeah, totally.
That was an inventive. And there's so many shows out there like Blair Witch, that tell a horror story in an inventive way. And some of them are more bloody than others. I mean, when I was growing up, the Shivers and the Rabbids and, Halloween and Texas Chainsaw and everything, they were all unique, but they were really bloody. And, I couldn't even watch my own movies. But, now you get some like, God, what was that one? The black director.
Yeah. Keel?
Yeah, Jordan Peele.
Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
His first one, which it's a single title, but
Yeah.
he's very inventive, and it wasn't bloody. It was just horror upon horror upon horror, and it built. So really, it cost nothing to make.
Get Out.
Yeah. So.
Interesting.
Yeah. So. Whenever I'm talking to film students and they're saying, "What should I be looking?" I said, "Yeah, find a horror movie, man. That's your calling card. That's your ticket.
It's fascinating.
What makes comedy so friggin' hard?
A lot of people think things are funny that
That
other
aren't.
people don't think are funny.
Yeah.
And how it plays. I mean, one thing, horror plays around the world. Everybody gets frightened by stuff. But with comedy, some people, don't find certain things funny.
Translation doesn't work.
Yeah, like something very slapsticky, which Americans tend to like, doesn't play so well in Britain, where they tend to like, a little bit more, twists and
Some
turns
clever
and clever
thinking.
dialogue,
Yeah.
all of those sorts of things. So, and then, you start showing it to the Italians, and they have it a completely different way. So, and look at the French. Some of their, most famous comedies have never translated anywhere else, like Jacques Tati, who I think is hysterical, never made it into the United States. And even some of their more mainstream French comedies, like Rabbi Jacob and all of that, they never made it. And then they would get translated for the American, like, The Lady in Red, or One Tall Man with One Black Shoe, that type of thing. They would remake them as American type movies and almost never work. But
Interesting.
so,
Do you think about the comedy, like where it's going to sell around the world, or do you try to like fit it in America?
Well,
or how does that work?
We know the main market is Canada and the United States. They're very much similar.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Okay.
but in the case of, say, Goon, you know, we made Goon and we thought, okay, we're making a hockey movie
Great movie.
that's very much like Slapshot in a way. Where's it going to play? And we were astonished where it played. You know, it played well in the United States and Canada, but it ran for weeks and weeks and weeks in Britain and Australia. I mean, hockey in Australia? It was just, you know, they went on, and Germany and other places. They got the humor and the heart. And that's one thing that Goon had, was a lot of heart.
It was good. It was good. Yeah.
It was very violent and, you know, a lot of hockey crude humor and everything else, but it also had the relationship, and the actors were lovable, and, you know, that type of thing. So it worked.
That's interesting. That it comes down to that relationship.
Yeah, like, you know, when we actually released the movie in Britain first, because the British distributor said, no, we want to go now. We were like, well, we haven't released it yet, and we were worried about piracy and all these sorts of things, and we were astonished at how well it did. So, yeah.
Well, I personally loved Goon. I'm not even that big of a hockey fan, so I kind of relate in the British thing, I guess, or the Britain way. I didn't grow up like a hockey guy. He's a martial artist and a boxer, and I kind of grew up with that a little bit. But it was clever, in my opinion. And I also have an opinion today that a lot of British stuff, especially TV series, like that Bodyguard one, has a lot of really clever writing. And I find that they're just killing it.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I mentioned I was born in Boston, but then I came to Montreal when I was 10. So, and my parents were one of the first ones to have a television in, you know, the town that we grew up in. My father's a big golfer, and so we didn't grow up in Montreal. We grew up in a place called Rosemere that was just off the island, because it had a golf course that my father could afford to belong to, and he liked it.
Okay.
But so we had a television, and very few people had television. And we got two channels. We got CBC English and CBC French. Until my father discovered that an antenna could bring in some of these American channels, which is what he wanted. But and on CBC English, we would get the British comedies. And I think a lot of the Canadian comics grew up with that type of thing. This, you know, the Second City people,
Okay.
Ivan, whatever. They had this thing where they were exposed to British comedy, and which is far more sardonic and clever than
Totally.
a lot of the stuff coming out of the United States, which was more slapsticky or, you know, situational. And I think that's one of the reasons that Canadians are so good at comedy, because they've been exposed to this, you know, this stuff coming not only out of the United States, but also Britain. So
That makes a lot of sense.
I've always thought that, because a lot of people are like, well, why are Canadians so good at comedy? And I think it's really because they were exposed at that age. And it, you know, made the American stuff become a little bit more sophisticated, and, you know, that in turn got other people. But, you know, you talk about comedy, hockey, not being a hockey guy. Well, because I grew up in Boston and I moved to Montreal for my own safety, I had nothing to do with hockey,
Oh,
because as coming out of Boston,
yeah.
in Montreal, you could get yourself killed, and vice versa. If you were, you know, we would go home to Boston, and the last thing on earth I'd tell anybody was I was from Montreal, because the Bruins and the Canadians, they hated each other.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, I don't know if you've ever been at Boston Garden
No.
with the Canadians playing. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. If they were to find out I was a Montrealer there, I'd be lynched.
Are you a Bill Burr fan?
I'm not. I don't even know who Bill Burr is.
Okay, Bill Burr is one of the biggest major comedians going today, but he's from Boston, and he's a huge hockey freak. and he hates Montreal.
No,
He loves Toronto. He loves the Toronto
'cause Toronto-
fans and all that.
Toronto loses. The
Well,
Canadians
that's
don't.
true.
So it's like, yeah, they're no threat.
Yeah, that's
Where
true.
Montreal was always a threat. So yeah, no, I stayed away. So it's funny that I've made these hockey movies, and not just Goon, but you talk Breakaway. I made my Bollywood hockey movie. I was like, I can't believe, but it did huge with the Indian audience and Southeast Asian audience, not only in Canada but in the United States. And I remember getting in a cab in Chicago, and some guy, you're a movie producer. What movie you make? And I go, well, I made Chicago. Didn't see it. This, that, and the other. And then I realized he's a Sikh. I go, I made a movie called Breakaway. Oh, the hockey movie! I saw that 5 times. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
What inspired something like that?
Well, it was brought to me by Viday Virani, who was developing it as, he's Southeast Indian. And he brought it to me and said, would you help me put this together? And I read a hockey movie, and I had a Bollywood dance scene on ice. I was like, this is crazy. But I thought, it just might work. And, one of
Wow.
my favorite scenes, always in a sports movie was, do you remember the Bad News Bears? Mm-hmm. Walter
Yeah.
Matthau, the drunk coach, and he goes out and he doesn't realize until the last minute, as part of his job is he's got to raise money for uniforms for the kids. So he has to sell sponsorships. And, there's a lineup of all the back of the kids with their sponsorship, Domino's and, Burger King and this. And then it comes to his team, and it's like, Liberty bail bonds, let freedom ring. So I thought, well, that's a scene that I always wanted to have. And of course, we sort of did it in Breakaway because all Sikhs are called Singh,
Right.
which means
Okay.
Lion King, basically. So we did the whole thing with we're patting the back of the various, the opponents, and it's this guy, this guy, this guy. And you come to our team, it's like sing, 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 sing. So, yeah.
That's amazing that, I guess, do they have rinks and things over there? I wouldn't even know. That's such a silly question.
No, but they have two sports. Of course, they play field hockey, and they play
Okay.
this crazy game called Kabaddi, which is a combination of lacrosse and rugby. And it's completely played without pads and brutal, and it's unbelievable. So they get the violence of hockey, and then they get the technique, because they play field hockey like we play
Okay.
hockey, only they're running. So it's, so it wasn't so much that they were taken by the hockey, but they were taken by the heart of the story.
Okay.
And that's always
See,
been a
there
big
again.
thing with me.
The heart.
You got to make it.
I love that.
You got to care for the characters. And, you see a lot of movies and you go, I don't like anybody in this. Even Elvis, you're talking about Elvis. I, saw it and I thought I would like Elvis, but he's a bit of an idiot, and
They certainly portrayed him that way.
yeah.
And I wasn't impressed with Tom Hanks' performance.
No, well, I, having never, known the Colonel.
Sure,
I
that makes
can't-
sense too.
But you don't like him, and you find him manipulative, and he gets never taken down. And, they invented this thing where, finally Elvis goes, I know about your troubles, and, when we're done, we're finished. Elvis never knew. He never knew that this guy was a fraud and was in the United States illegally and couldn't leave the country. So,
What a shame.
yeah, so... I mean, in that regard, but some other movie I was watching the other day, I went, everybody in this movie is a jerk. It's like,
Yeah.
why bother? You gotta care for the characters.
Yeah.
You
I'm with
mentioned
you.
Shawshank Redemption. Can you imagine if you didn't like the protagonists? If you didn't like
Red.
Red, or if you didn't
Totally.
like, yeah.
Totally.
And we watch that movie at least once a year.
Yeah, they're great movies, and you've got to care for them. So, all my most successful movies have been, because they had heart. You cared for the people, as raunchy or as crazy or as whatever.
I love hearing this.
So, Yeah, it's one of the things when I read a script is like, do I like these people? Do I care for them? Not the bad guy. I don't care if you blow the bad guy up, but you got to care for the guy blowing him up. So,
How many times have you passed on a script and you went, ah, fuck, I shouldn't have done that?
oh, well, a couple. Yeah, I'm notorious for having turned down Airplane.
Oh, really? Okay, conversation's over.
I was like, what is this? It's a bunch of jokes. This is not a comedy. This is terrible. So I said, nope.
Now, do you feel like if you did make it, maybe it wouldn't have had the same success today, or maybe it would be better?
I definitely think it wouldn't have. If I had made it, I probably would have changed it beyond, recognition.
Okay.
So, and the other one, I actually wasn't offered it, but when I heard about it, I thought, oh, this is never going to be the American Pie series.
Okay.
Okay. And they're now remaking that or something.
Well,
I just read this.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be, and then I met the guys that made American Pie, and they said, well, we based it on Porky's, and
Well, I see that.
Of course.
I was like, oh, really? Okay.
Oh my God.
So,
Such a
yeah.
huge series.
Now, on the other side of that coin that Andrew asked, have you ever taken a script that after you're or while you're making it, go, ooh, I shouldn't have done that?
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like more often than
Yeah,
not.
no. Really, only once.
Okay.
It's only one movie I've never ever, sort of lived down. Battlefield Earth.
Okay.
Yeah, and we tried, and it was never going to work from the get-go.
And why was that? What happened?
Well, a combination of things. Number one, the script was L. Ron Hubbard, who discovered, Scientology. So it was, and the book apparently is quite successful. I read the book and I was like, oh my God, it's putting me to sleep here. And the characters were, the bad guys were really bad and the good guys were like idiots. And, I was like, okay.
This is a John Travolta vehicle.
The John Travolta, and I did it, the only movie I've ever done just for the money. And they offered, that was Ely Samaha and I had basically sold my soul to get the Boondock Saints made. And part of selling my soul was I had to do a movie for him. If he financed the Boondock Saints, which he ended up stealing all the money from anyway, and kept his company going, but he said, well, now you got to do my movie, and the movie I want to do is the Boondock Saints, Battlefield Earth. And I remember going to a luncheon with Travolta at the Bel Air Hotel with Ely, and I came out and I went, Ely, this is a disaster. Do not do this. He said, are you kidding? I got a John Travolta movie for, $14 or $15 million. And he, of course, told John he was doing it for 40. And, we started making it. We put it all together. Roger Christian, who was a young director he wasn't young, he's older than me, but his famous thing was that he was the production designer on the Star Wars and Aliens.
Okay.
And had worked with George Lucas as second unit director on some of the other Star Wars. So I loved Roger. He was great. When we were making it the first 3 weeks, Travolta wasn't there. I thought, well, maybe we can do this. And the visual effects were coming together, the miniatures were coming together, all of this stuff. I thought, well, maybe this isn't going to be as horrible as I thought. And then Travolta showed up and just, oh my God, it all went to hell in a handbasket real quick. And at that point, it was just all downhill as far as I was concerned.
Well, I have a huge question mark above my head right now. Like, why? What happened when he arrived?
Oh, he was a movie star.
I see.
And, I thought, okay, this is his vanity project. He's going to be, anything he can do to get this thing over the top. He was he didn't give a shit. He was doing it for the money as well, so I thought. Obviously he had a love of Scientology, but on the set, he brought in these Scientologists, and I was constantly battling with them because they were, I said, look, we can't have it known as a Scientology movie. So you got to step back. Well, after every take, John would turn, and they had their own little monitor over on the side, and they would say, "Yeah, good take," or whatever. Meanwhile, the director and everything else were totally ignored. He would just go off and he'd do his thing. And it took him so long to get into the makeup and hair, and then
Yeah.
he insisted on taking it off so he could eat for lunch or for craft service, and then we'd have to put it back on, and it just took forever. But the big thing was that the look of the film. He came in and totally redesigned the aliens or Klingons or whatever the fuck they were called.
After 3 weeks of shooting?
No. Well, yeah. So, and so I saw them. They're not tall enough. We had hired the tallest extras that we could get. But these guys in the book are 9 feet tall.
Right.
So nobody's 9 feet
Those are
tall.
hard to find. Yeah.
So, we got every basketball player in Montreal and this and put them up. And then he still wasn't satisfied. So then we built them kiss boots. That
Right
raised
on.
their mother's six. But of course, I couldn't move in these things. And I remember standing there and Travolta sitting there, and the first couple of them step out of the makeup trailer with these kiss boots. And he's like, "Okay, now we're talking." And I'm like, "We're fucking doomed." This is like, these guys are so not threatening. It's ridiculous. And they couldn't walk. They had these big long hands, and they would like grab stuff like this. Yeah.
Oh
My
man.
God, a 3-year-old could outrun them. It was, I don't know, it just got on and on and on. And then we were pouring money at it. And it just took forever to get anything done. And I remember Forrest Whitaker would be sitting there waiting to do his take, and I could just see how sad this poor guy was. Realizing he had made the worst mistake of his career.
How long of a shoot was it?
I don't really know. It seemed to be interminable. And then, Roger was constantly being co-opted by these, Scientology guys. I remember they came to me and they were like, "We want to do crew gifts for everybody." I said, "Well, that's very nice. What are you going to do?" "Well, we're thinking of a jacket." I said, "Okay." So I come in and there's like these hundreds of brown paper bags all over the floor of the studio lobby. And I said, "What are these?" "Oh, these are the crew gifts from the Scientology guys." I go, "Okay. So in each bag is a jacket?" "Yeah, and there's some other stuff. They're really heavy."
Oh no.
So I go,
I can feel this coming.
L. Rod Hubbard books.
"Oh, and Scientology magazines and stuff." And I went, "Get this shit out of here." And "Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean?" I said, "You can't give away Scientology crap to the crew. It's going to get out, and it'll be all over the trade that, we're a Scientology movie, which will sink it." And then Roger came to me and says, "Oh, I got some great news. It's going to save us some money, which I know we need. But so they've offered me a place to do the editing of the movie in Los Angeles." And I said, "Let me guess, at the Scientology headquarters on Sunset?" "Well, yeah, but they said nobody will know about it." And I went, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Don't do it. You're going to be the director of the Scientology movie. They're going to be after you to join Scientology and blah, blah, blah." Sure enough.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he did edit there?
Yeah.
And when did it get out?
Of course it got out.
And then did it
The
sink?
movie got reviewed as the Scientology movie.
Really? Wow. I mean, with L. Ron Hubbard being the writer already, that's enough, I suppose, in one regard, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, there was also this thing. I remember Ellie Saban was like, "They're going to get every single Scientology in the world. There's 14 million of them. And, they're all going to go to see the movie twice. They've promised me that. And so that's, that's 28 million tickets." And I went, "Ely, that ain't never going to happen." And sure enough, it didn't happen. A lot of Scientologists went to see the movie. And a few curious non-Scientologists went to see it. But it became, people were laughing in the movie theater. It was just ridiculous. Anyway, the only movie I ever regretted.
Interesting, because now I want to see this now.
Yeah. And it goes back to your thing
there's
about
some
heart.
good things. Some of the visual effects are terrific, and I worked with some of the best miniature guys in the world. They were from Britain, and they did all this stuff, and I was like, wow, and it's just so sad that the movie was such a piece of junk, So
But Travolta now is going to go on all these other movies, and does he bring that same?
no,
Okay,
no.
thank God. I like Travolta. I like Travolta.
Yeah, so he brought it because it's L. Ron Hubbard's book.
He's a Scientologist.
Yeah, no, I
And
know. But,
they created him.
right.
And he still is a Scientologist, but he doesn't, I think after that, everybody realized how poisonous the whole connection to Scientology could be. And, look, Tom Cruise is a Scientologist, Ali Sheedy. There's all of these actors who are Scientologists, which is fine. But you got to know that what I didn't understand about Scientology, because I don't know a lot of it, but what I do know is that they teach you that the most important thing is the self. And it's all about you and how you feel and how you are perceived and how you are treated. And it's all about you. Well, filmmaking is a team experience.
Big time.
So, in a case, everybody who's ever worked with him, again, that I know of, has had situational things with him, and it's been problematic. And there are others out there who I've heard are fine. Cruise is a well-known Scientologist, but he controls things, and he's got the clout to control things. So people just put up with him.
Yeah, he's so well known as a Scientologist, but he's literally the biggest movie star in the world, or something.
Yeah.
Right?
And he credits Scientology for making him that way. And, Travolta credited Scientology for doing his thing. And, what can you say? If it works, it works. And for a lot of actors are not well-known Scientologists, but a lot of them are. So, whatever. It's never appealed to me. And no. I don't ever want a religion or Zats or Orthodox or whatever to get in the way of making a movie.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it seems completely aside the point, but
Well, you don't want to alienate something. So, do you want to make a movie that's so Jewish that only Jews could enjoy
Right.
it? I mean, that's not what Duddy Kravitz was all about. And a lot of Jewish people hated Duddy Kravitz because he was, so conniving and grasping and everything else. But, I made another one with Sidney Lumet. The first movie I made with Sidney was, Stranger Among Us, which, was, oh, God, I'm blanking on her name. But she played an undercover cop who goes into the Orthodox Jewish thing to track down this criminal. And people referred to it as Vitness, which I thought was pretty funny.
Vitness?
Yeah, it's a joke on how the Orthodox Jews pronounce W.
Oh. Okay.
So, and that whole milieu. So, but again, you were rooting for somebody. There was a certain amount of, she became enthralled with the religion and the family that she was undercover with and all of that sort of thing. So it opened up the eyes of the non-Orthodox world to it, very much like, Witness.
Yeah, did it with the Amish.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Right.
you can get into and telling stories on religion, but it's got to be open to other stuff, to expose the world to the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I love the movie Witness.
yeah, it's a great movie. So, yeah.
Very cool. So now, a master class for anyone that's listening or watching. Mm-hmm. Anyone who endeavors to be a film producer. How do you do it?
Oh, love movies. That's number one. If you don't love the business, you're never going to be good at it. So, and I always say, understand the business. Go to film school. So, I was lucky that I had a film school. Prior, if I had been born 4 or 5 years earlier, I would have had no film school to go to. Maybe Ryerson, I could have gone and learned to be a cameraman, as I said, but, where I went, it was only the second year that school existed, and it was one of only well, it was the only one that taught film history and film theory. So I would have had to go to the U.S. or whatever, But so that, and I didn't even know I wanted to be a film producer. As I said, I didn't even know that I wanted to be in film. I was studying art,
Right.
and when I found out, my father was pissed off that I didn't want to go to university, and his whole thing was, well, you better get a university degree or you're not living here. And when I found out that I could get a degree, a university degree, an actual BA, studying movies, I was like, sign me up.
Right on.
So, yeah. And then from there, a lot of it is network. I tell the kids that I lecture, because I lecture at the University of Toronto, I lecture at Ryerson, I lecture at the Canadian Film Centre. I'm on the board of the Canadian Film Centre.
Yeah, I go down there every year.
Yeah.
They have me come in and talk to the directors and the producer students.
Yeah. So, and I say, look around. And especially the producer students, I go, who are these guys you're working with here? Who's that director that's got some real smarts? Who's that writer that's got some real smarts? Well, your job as a producer is to support that talent. 'Cause people don't understand what a producer does. But the real thing that a producer does is he supports the talent and helps put it together. So nurture and find, go to that writer and go, I think you're really good. I want to help you. So I'm going to work with you and help you to get your name out there and get your stuff seen. Or to the director, I'm going to help you, and we're going to make this little calling card movie, and then we're going to try and sell it. And so you hitch your wagon, so to speak, to these other talented people who are more visible in the Hollywood universe. Producers are fairly invisible, which is fine with me. Give me the money. But, you're the guy that gets things going. You're the spark. Directors don't start stuff. Some like Spielberg, who are producers themselves,
Right,
and have producers working for them, that's a different animal. But a lot of directors, without a producer, they're useless. So they can't get anything together. So it's the producer that does that spark. So I say, you start doing that. Look for these things, and then try and help them, and go along. And you'll eventually go on with them. And so always be looking around. And then once you get onto a film set, who is smart here? Who's really good? Who have you be put to, who in the studio is going to be helping you? And then you want to know, and it's all about relationships. You don't want to come in as a jerk. You want to come in as a guy that gets things done and is collaborative. So always remember that it's, it's a team sport, and you need to be part of that team. So, you don't want to get in there and alienate a lot of people. That doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do your director any good or your writer any good. You want to be, the guy that gets things done. So that's what a producer is. So that's what I tell them, so that's the film students I lecture. And even down at the AFI where I occasionally lecture, it's the same thing. I tell them, it's all the same story. Look around, who's here? And, the other thing I say is don't discount Hollywood. It's where it all happens. Sooner or later, you got to go. So don't turn up your nose.
What do you say about young writers trying to write within what they think is a fine budget? Can young writers be writing epics, big?
Yeah, I tell them, don't write to a budget, and a producer's going to help you do that. So, you want to be writing to sell. You want to be doing your best work, and a lot of things have changed. In the old days, I used to get these scripts around my desk, and I'd be reading it and be like, oh, okay, well, I think we can do this for a reasonable budget. Then the next page is, the Sixth Fleet steams around the corner. And you'd be like, holy, well, fuck. Well, you can do that now.
Well, that's true.
And it doesn't cost very much. So,
Okay.
don't worry if, anything you can imagine, you can pretty much do. Not that it's free,
Right.
but if it's new and unique, you'll figure out a way to get it done. So, it's that's part of it. Just to write and tell the best story you can and the most unique story you can as well. I mean, understand your genre. That's real important. You don't want to be writing a comedy and somebody gets knifed to death on the third
Yeah.
page, but
Unless it's really funny.
yeah. And I've never been one for mixing genres.
Right.
So, it's like the Wayans brothers. I know them. I did a movie with Marlon and everything, but they keep doing this stuff that mixing genres. I'm like, this shit, maybe it works for your particular audience, but I don't see
Oh,
how it
like
works.
what? Action comedy kind of thing?
Well, no, horror comedy.
Horror comedy, okay.
Like they'll rip off Scream with
Right,
yeah,
stuff
right.
in,
Scary
like,
movie.
Scary movie. It's like,
You made one of Andrew's favorite movies,
Which one?
Sidekicks.
Yeah.
Oh, Sidekick.
When I was young, man, I loved that movie.
Yeah.
Loved it.
That
Yeah.
started because I had done a couple of movies with Chuck, who I loved. But the thing that always impressed me, when we were making Hitman in Vancouver and walking down the street with Chuck, and the little kids would come out, Chuck,
Yeah. Yeah.
the little guys loved him more than the older guys. And I mean, missing in action and,
Yeah.
all of that. And Hitman was really violent. So these guys weren't, seeing that, but they knew who Chuck Norris was. And he was starting to fade a little bit by then. And I said to his brother Aaron, I said, Chuck is so popular with these kids. We got to make a Chuck movie for the kids. So we started kicking around and we came up with the idea for Sidekicks.
You nailed it.
And yeah, when we were making the movie, they, Schwarzenegger came up with the Greatest American Hero and we were like, oh shit. But they totally screwed it up. And we just did Sidekicks as a very heartfelt, and Chuck was terrific in it, and Jonathan Brandis, God rest his soul,
Yeah.
was terrific. And we had a very good cast. And no, I always liked that movie. And that was a totally independent thing. And I tell people about the financing of that. They can't believe me. So
Can we describe a little bit of it
Tell
here?
us.
yeah. Well, I don't know if you've ever been in Houston,
I've never.
you're always going to hear about this guy called Mac McInvale. And he's known affectionately in Houston as Mattress Mac
Okay.
because he owns a furniture store called, oh God, I can't remember the name of the store, but it's famous. But he owns one furniture store. And he's also known as very generous, and they get flooded all the time, and he's like, okay, anybody that needs a place to stay for a few days, and he lets them sleep on the mattresses in the store, and they sort of hang out. He's got a kitchen, and all these people will come in. He's quite a character. Anyway, long story short, when we put the movie together, I had originally sold it to a group of financiers out of Germany. And things seemed to be going fine, and we started scouting for the movie in Houston because Chuck had recently moved to Houston.
Right. Okay.
And he said, by the way, I met these guys at a fundraiser, the McInvales, and would you do me a favor? They want to take you to dinner and pick your brain. I said, okay. So Aaron, Chuck's brother, and I go, we have dinner with these guys, and they start telling us what they're doing, and they're going to put all this money into a Tarzan movie starring Greg Louganis, the diver,
Yeah.
because their kid is taking diving lessons with the same guy, and they've met Greg, and they think that. So they start telling me the Tarzan story, and I'm like, so I said, what's your advice? And I said, don't. You're going to lose your money. So they're like, oh, well, what are you guys doing? And I said, well, this is what we're, oh, that sounds great. We'd love to get in on that. And I said, well, unfortunately, it's awesome. So about a month later, I'm in my office in Los Angeles and knock on the door. I get up and it's the McInvales, Mac and his wife. And so what's going on in the movie? We'd sure like to get in. I said, well, unfortunately, it's it's, sold, and I can't cut you in, but I don't know. Okay, well, if anything happens, let us know. I said, fine, but 2 weeks later, knock, knock, knock on the door. And by this time, the Germans are looking a little shaky. They've missed one deadline. They got another one. So I said, well, I don't mind telling you, these guys are starting to, bug me. And I don't know, I've given them this deadline next week, Friday, 5 o'clock, put up or shut up. Friday at 4:30, knock, knock, knock. It's the McAvails. And I like, we're here to help you celebrate. I said, okay, fine. And so far, I'm not celebrating, but we got a half hour. So we sit there and we're shooting the shit and everything. And 5 o'clock comes and Matt goes, so? What? I said, I haven't heard anything, and there's no money in the bank, so they're supposed to put. And he says, okay, well, we're in. We'll take it. What do you need from us? I said, well, they were supposed to put $500,000 in the account. He looks at his wife and goes, Linda, write this man a check. So she pulls out her little personal checkbook with flowers and bees on it. And do I make it out to you, Don? And I'm like,
Sure.
yeah. She writes me a check for $500,000 and tears it and says, okay, we'll see you. What's next? I said, well, we'll come to Houston and we'll start scouting. And I said, this budget's $7 million. That's not a problem. And okay. They leave and I look at the check and I see it's drawn on a brokerage account, which means they're still open. So I pick up the phone and I call and I go, I'm looking for the broker who represents the McInvales at Merrill Lynch or whatever the hell it was. And I get the broker and he goes, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I just had Linda and Mac McInvale in my office and they want to invest in this movie I'm making. And he goes, oh boy. And I said, okay, these two are a couple of, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, how much is the check for? And I said, $500,000. He goes, oh, that's okay.
Oh, wow.
What? He said, yeah, it'll be good. And
Wow.
so he put the money up, and he was a funny guy. I mean, there was a guy called David Deming who was famous for having gone to Tokyo after World War II and put the Japanese economy back together. And he introduced the Japanese to what was then called just-in-time manufacturing, so that, didn't carry a lot of inventory and all of this sort of stuff. And he was famous for this, and he was world-renowned as an economist. So the McInvales could not get their heads around how movies worked. So they brought in David Demings, and he sat with us, and for about 2 weeks, and he went through everything. And he had this big meeting with the McInvales and me and Aaron and Chuck, and he basically said, this is a terrible business that nobody understands how it works. But these guys seem to know what they're doing, and that's all I can tell you. Go with God and Mac.
Oh my God.
Writing the checks. And not only that, he put the entire $7 million up himself. Then we finished the movie, and he says, what's next? And I said, well, now I'm going to show it to distributors and sell it because we got to get it out there. So he said, it's a pretty good movie, isn't it? I said, it certainly is, And so we showed it to a couple of distributors, and we had various and sundry offers. And they all wanted, their distribution side. And most of them in those days were like 30 to 45%. That is what they wanted for their cut. So Max said, well, that seems awfully unfair. I put up all the money and, they're getting all of this and they didn't take any risk or anything. I said, well, that's how the studios work. And they're going to put up the money for the P&A and all that. So he said, well, how do I better this? And I said, well, there are these things called rent-a-studio deals where you put up the P&A and they release the movie and they take much less because they have nothing to risk at all. He said, well, could we investigate that? And that's when I went to TriStar, and they said, yeah, we'll take it on a rent-a-studio deal. And I went to Mac and I said, Mac, they estimate this is going to cost $7 million to release. Okay. And
This is a great story.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy.
Well, he not only did he make all of the production budget back, he also made all of the P&A that he put up back at the end. And where I hear about Mac all these days now is like he's this incredible gambler who will bet, $20 million on the Super Bowl or $50 million on the World Series or something. Guy's a gambler, and he's done incredibly well, and is also just a solid, down-to-earth guy who happens to own like 5 Ferraris or something, but also takes care of his people in Houston. So yeah,
Wow.
that is the most incredible finance story I've got.
So what was he bet? He was betting on you? Betting on, yeah.
And Chuck.
I think it's a good
Yeah,
bet.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
And
great.
then the only other, he never did another movie, but his wife convinced him to finance Chuck's fitness videos.
Okay.
Right.
And they did incredibly well with those as well. So, yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's
And
good
I
to
still-
know
I've-
based on the fact that you
Oh, yeah.
dig that movie.
I still love that white ninja scene at the end. It's just every once in a while I YouTube it or something. I just watch it.
The main thing with Chuck was he was absolutely the worst romantic lead in history. But, so he was supposed to have this relationship with a high school teacher who was, but
Oh wow, really?
even in The Hitman, the actress Alberta Watson, they're supposed to have this hot and steamy love scene, and I was like, Jesus Christ, just fucking kiss her,
Yeah, that's funny because I really can't picture him being too romantic either.
No.
That's really funny.
No, but nice man.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Have you met him?
No, but I spoke to him on the phone, and we've written letters back and forth back in the letter days.
Okay.
Because I ran a big martial arts club and tried to get Chuck up to do like some seminars and stuff. But he was out of that by then, and he wasn't going to come up. So
yeah. No, his brother's actually his brother was Chuck stand-in.
yeah,
I mean, even when we were doing sidekicks, I mean, Chuck could kick so high, but that was it. And that was, Aaron took over, who was, I guess Aaron's about 6 years younger than Chuck. Looks a lot like him. So anyway,
Well,
Interesting.
that's a great story. That's wicked.
Yeah, it is. Do short films have pull?
no, they're what are called. I don't discourage them because they're calling cards, as we say. So young director, he wants to get noticed. What's it hurt to make a short,
shoot something.
especially if you can finance it, you or your uncle or your parents or whatever
Mm-hmm.
finance this short movie. It's a good way to get people to pay attention to you, because it's one thing to go into a meeting with a Hollywood executive now, if you can even get a meeting in person because nobody's in the office.
Right.
True.
But you leave it behind and say, this is my short. I'd like you to take a look at it. Okay, great, thank you. We'll see you.
Now you can just
And
send
they-
it over the internet.
And well, then takes the short or, passes it along to an assistant, and the assistant goes, fuck, this is really good. Goes in and says, you got to see this. Or he goes, this is stupid.
Right.
But generally assistants want to be the bearer of good news. They want to find somebody that, makes them worth it to their bosses. So
And they know their bosses. They get to know their
they know
tastes.
what's going to do and all that. Yeah. So I've had a lot of stuff from assistants that go, you got to read this. And I'm like, do I have to read this? Yes, you have to read this. And, that's how a lot of stuff gets through the barrier to me, because I can't read everything.
Of course not.
And, it's how it happens. And so with a young director, and especially if they're interested in going into the TV side, because TV eats up directors like crazy. They burn through them like mad, and they're open always to new talent, and especially diverse talent. So many women are getting gigs in television, and so many, young blacks, young Southeast Asians, young,
Absolutely.
it's television because they eat up this talent and just go with, and there's so much out there, they need people. So if you've got a decent calling card, and this director goes, well, I'm doing this series, and, we change directors every 2 weeks, we'll throw you in. And then you do okay, and then you get another one, and you get 2 the next time, this type of thing.
Right.
So that's how it's going. Yeah, I mean, the thing I wouldn't want to be is a white, older male director. Because your days are numbered, buddy.
True enough.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we see that.
Yeah. So it's I think that's supposed to be disappointing on this side of the table. But no, I'm just kidding. As a white guy, no.
Well, no, it's just the diversity.
Sure.
No,
No,
yeah,
it makes
no.
sense.
It does make so
Yeah.
much sense.
And we see it every day when we go to set.
Yeah, it's a
It's
very
still,
good thing.
talent will out. So, I say that, and directors bemoan these things, but if you've got the chops, you're going to get hired. So. And
Very cool.
Yeah. It's,
Well, Don, before we close up shop, we would love for you to sign our table.
Sure.
And people will watch this on YouTube, but they'll listen everywhere else. So this is the part where everyone listening on Apple or Spotify just
Any
get to hear you
place in
scribble.
particular?
No, I think
No, you choose.
yeah, do whatever you want, wherever too at the table. If you want to crawl along the top over here, no.
Charlie Guns. Hey.
Yeah,
I
man.
love Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, that's my biggest problem is I bring directors into his shop and I can't get them out.
Oh man, it's beautiful in there.
Yeah, God. Oh, he's always calling me like, they're trying to shut me down again, Don. You got to write a letter to the premiere or this or that, the other. God. All right.
We're going to say it once again. For you listeners, that's Don's Sharpie scratching across the table.
Yes, it is.
But even on visual, you can't see it. You can see Don
Yeah, no,
signing.
totally. One of these days we'll post a picture and all that kind of thing. Just got to fill it up a little bit. Beautiful.
There we go.
Fabulous.
Now you're going to find another place for somebody else to sit. or
Yeah.
move the table around.
That's true. That's true.
Don, thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank
Don,
you.
it was such a
fascinating
pleasure,
conversation, man.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, cut it, D.